Hey everyone, I'm back with another video trying to do another crazy task on my training app in the objective of showing you something cool that you might want to use for yourself. And today's task is somebody posted in the Discord that they were interested in connecting to a MySQL database from Noodle. And it reminds me, it brings up the fact that at the moment we have a few options when we want to make the backend for a Noodle app. And with open sourcing, this is going to get so much more important. We have the Noodle backend, which is open sourced and it uses MongoDB and Parse. So you can do cloud functions with JavaScript. It has a sort of node server running that you can do JavaScript functions in, which is really handy because it's the same way that we do things in Noodle, which you've already seen because I showed it in other videos. The cloud function part, like receive response for API calls, where we can run some scripts, and it's all in the same format that Noodle does. And that's good, but it limits us to MongoDB and Postgres. I thought I heard someone saying they tried it with Postgres and it worked because you have that option when you're setting up in your initial deployment to Amazon or to Google Cloud. You can choose either MongoDB or Postgres. So you can have an SQL database as much as you can have a no SQL, so a MongoDB database. But Parse forces it all into the same framework, which is with columns, fixed columns, and storing data in a kind of SQL way, but not really. So that's all well and good. But what if you want to make your own backend? So at the moment, I've heard people using Xano. There's a prefab for Xano. People use what's it called? Superbase, which is there's also a prefab in the Noodle library for that. So this is doing, I think maybe I already have it in here somewhere. Do I? Superbase. No, we can install that to have a look at it. So it's good to have a look at that, and oh, I do have it actually, and remind ourselves of what that does, because fetch current user, what does it do? Superbase header full router, what does that mean? No. What I wanted to see is there a way to create data with Superbase? Create a record, Superbase. Setup client, example app routes, example requests, magic link. It's a lot about user stuff. Example request. Fetch company. Oh, okay. To fetch data from Superbase, you need to write JavaScript function using Noodle variables. So yeah, it's not as easy as using the Noodle pre-built like create record node, for example. That's tied in with Parse. So if I go to create listing, it gives me like input properties exactly to this particular table. And if I change it to user, it gives me different input properties and gives me a way to define access control rules. So that tight integration with Noodle is precious, because if not, then you have to go through, oh, couldn't find the chat history. Okay, whatever. You have to go through this kind of stuff where we we have a Superbase library that's been imported from the module that was created to make, or the part of this prefab that imports the Superbase library. That means that we can do Superbase from company select. So you can see like the sort of SQL-esque way of doing things here. So you would have to do something similar with Superbase or your backend. You would have to figure out, okay, I've got the way, like the really handy thing about the Superbase prefab is all of the user stuff is done. So sign up, sign in, log in, log out. Sorry, sign up, log in, log out. Sending magic links to log in, password reset. That's all done. That's really cool, because that's the same across all Superbase instances. They all have a user table. They all have a session table. So that stuff is all done for you. But if you start creating your own tables, so listings, cats, whatever it is, then you have to create a function for each one of those to update, to delete, probably a script actually, with a create function, an update function, a delete function, targeting a specific class, and then the inputs from that function are first name, last name, whatever, listing title, cat name, whatever it is, need to be, and then that needs to go through a component input, and then you would have a bunch of your own components, like with the Supabase one, or with the Noodle record ones. You would have your own collection of create record, and then within that there could be create listing, create cat, create company, whatever, and the same for delete. So it'll get a little bit messy, but I'm wondering if there's a way to do it in a more condensed way. That's what I'm thinking about at the moment. So I haven't got an answer for that yet, but we can explore it together. And I'm thinking about how to achieve this without needing to use Supabase. For example, if you choose Supabase, okay, you've got a Postgres database behind it, so that's okay. But if you decide you want to change databases one day, all of the calls are intimately tied into the Supabase method. So you don't have an API layer, as you call it. Like you can't just access a database. So if I have a front end, I can't just say, directly write something into the SQL database, or like you probably can, but it would be extremely dangerous because people could just inject stuff into your database easily from the front end and completely make a mess of your website and take it over. You need to have a system in between your website and the database, which I call an API layer. So it's an interface layer with the database. I call the layer and say, hey, can you please create something? Here are the details, and that layer processes that request and says, okay, looks good. I'll put that into the database. So it creates an abstraction between your front end, where hackers could potentially be, and the database. The hacker cannot get into the API layer because it's in your server, and the only way of communicating with it is through API calls, and you've set up the routes. So you know that there's a create, an update, and a delete route, and the hacker would have to use those routes to be able to try to get in somehow, but it's not as easy as that. Especially if you've set it up correctly, then that API layer could be really like Fort Knox. There's only one way in, there's only one or two or three things you can do with it, and your app becomes much safer. So why I would like to find an API layer that's a bit more universal is something like n8n, for example, that we saw with the cat GIF example. n8n allows you to create workflows that would be, if I have an n8n workflow that calls a cat database, and tomorrow I want it to call a puppies database, then I can swap out one node. I can just swap it out and say, I don't want to call this link anymore. I want to call a different link. Make sure that the data is parsed correctly, but it still goes through the same channels to go, we made it call MQTT to update the front end for the user. Things like that don't have to be changed because that service stays the same whether it's one endpoint or another endpoint. Similarly, if you're using Supabase, I would rather that you're using n8n to communicate with Supabase, and you have like simple calls you can do from here and say, call class user with this object, and I send the user object to n8n, and n8n has the schema to be able to process that user object. So in the end, you only have like 2 or 3, like you just have a create and update, a delete, maybe even just one, just like call data, like, data query. And that data query, you send create, update, delete, or whatever, create, read, update, or delete. You send the class name and you send an object with it. And then on the n8n side, you have something to process that data and be able to send it into the database or read from the database, right? So that would be my ideal. Then there's very little you need to ever change from the front end. It's just you still call the same endpoint, even if you change databases. And in n8n or alternative, which we'll see today, you only have to have the node for Supabase swapped out for a node for Xano, for example. Or in this case, it's a node. There's no database, and I want to swap it out for something like MySQL, which was the question in the forum, in the Discord. So what my objective is for today is that I want to do get that cat GIF. I want there to be a call goes out somewhere. I'll show you where I think it should go. That calls an HTTP address from that somewhere, retrieves a cat GIF, stores it into a MySQL database, and then triggers a query on the front end that queries the current list of cat GIFs and shows me all of the cat GIFs that have been retrieved. So the more I click the button, the more cat GIFs I get, the happier I become, because then I have lots of cats and it makes me happy. So that's the idea. So how do we make an endpoint that creates and reads and possibly deletes, but we probably won't have the time, from a MySQL database? We'll get started with read and create, because that's what we want to do to see the cats here. So this is the challenge for today. It's going to be tricky, but we will not stand down in the face of trickiness, for sure not. So the tool that I would like to use for this that I've been researching is called Node-RED. So Node-RED is a visual editor. So you can create node functions, very similar to what we're doing in the back end of Noodle. And the node functions can be called through HTTP in endpoints and HTTP out endpoints, or response endpoints, sorry, will give you your response. What I'm interested in is there's MQTT endpoints in and out, and there's also WebSockets in and out. So it's very exciting, something I think I would like to explore. This tool is mostly used and promoted by IoT fanatics and hobbyists. So people who like the Internet of Things, like creating, a temperature sensor that will close the shutters on their house when the sun gets too bright or it's hot or whatever. So, which is good for what we're trying to do here. It, I think, will work very well. The thing that I like about it is it has a native, not a native, it has a library of modules, and there's 4,810 modules, and there's quite a few for SQL. So there's like what I wanted, which is MySQL. There's also, so like Node-RED MySQL I've already installed. There's Node-RED SQLite, there's MySQL, there's like several from different community members. You can, they're maintained, so you can see when they were last updated, what the version is. So that's cool, because it's an active, vibrant community. There's a lot of stuff online about it. It's very well maintained. And it could create an N8N style API layer with something like MySQL or any other database. Now you might be asking, why don't I use N8N? Because it does the same thing. My problem with N8N is that it's an API layer that's fun for creating cloud functions. If I just need to do a cloud function to process some data, communicate with an AI, do something that requires a bit of branching and logic, then N8N is great. Where I fear N8N would not work as a global data API layer, is that it's a little bit slow. And I fear that making lots of calls to it all at once would slow it down and make it unmanageable. Because it is doing this thing of where, like, every time it runs an execution, it saves a log of the execution with like all the data that was put through it. And you have this execution log library where you can go through and look through every time someone called the API endpoint. I think that's going to become very, very heavy at the point that there's like one user is making hundreds of calls because they're using the app the whole day long, So I wanted to try something that maybe could scale better. And from what I've read, Node-RED is much lighter. It doesn't have the same log. It's much more DIY. You really have to build your log and error functions yourself. And so it reminds me a bit of Noodle. And it seems to be very quick. And I've seen people saying that they run their whole data architecture on Node-RED. So I'm interested to see if that really holds water. In theory, it should, because it's just a simple node application. Like you run it on your server, you click deploy, and it just fires up whatever these flows are. It fires them up as, a node server that has a bunch of different endpoints with different paths. So, it's like it's basically creating your routes in a classic project. If this was an Express server, I would have a whole bunch of different routes, and those routes do things and return data, and that's it. So it also has a lot more kind of machine things in it. I don't know how to explain that very well, but like the exec, it runs system commands. And so you can get it to actually interact, as far as I know, you can get it to interact directly with the server itself. Like interacting with memory and stuff like that. So this is, you know, higher level stuff, probably designed for those IoT people, because they need to manage a kind of hardware device as well as the stuff that they're doing through whatever web interface they have. But a lot of it's like hardware based, so it's possible that that's for that reason. But you can write files as well, which I found really interesting, because you can actually write a text file to the system and append things to the text file. So that's a really cool way to create a log file, for example, and have that on the server, not have like an N8N graphical interface, like log of everything that's happened, but create a log file when errors happen, for example, who made the request, what was the error, and put that into the server so I can read it from my server interface and then debug that in a much lighter and less invasive way to the system. Let the system just do its job. And you know, this is the thing about injecting data as well. You can set up a node with a bunch of different parameters on the message object, which is the object that's passed through all these different nodes. And you can create your own test objects. So if you know that the AI is going to return this object of conversation, you can copy paste that in here and then inject it into your workflow and see how it works with a debugger on it. Debug with a debugger to see, okay, once it does that, what do I get out of it? And so that debugger will show me stuff in the debug window. So again, much lighter, much more like just a browser with a console log type thing. So I do have a lot of hope for this. Anyway, that's the presentation of Node-RED. We need to get into building. This is a Node-RED I'm running locally on my computer, so I'm going to close it down for now. And I've set up an EC2, which if you don't know how to do that, there's other videos I've done where I set up the EC2. I've made a particular security rule for Node-RED. 1880 is the port that needs to be open to get into Node-RED, so I've added that to the security group. The stevesnoderedguide.com has a guide on setting up Node-RED for ignore me. The node-red.org official website has an installation guide that shows you how to run Node-RED on Amazon, on AWS. So you can run it on this Elastic Beanstalk service, which I think is a bit more for like serious apps that need to do more serious work with like availability zones and scaling and all this stuff. We are not going to do that today. We're going to run a very nice, simple EC2 Ubuntu image. So it actually tells you everything you need to do. Start the instance type. T2 micro is a good starting point. Add the custom 1880 port. So it gives you all the information you need. It's really nice. I like tools that have very well documented guides, because that's how I survive, is on these well documented guides. Other ones, it's like, well, of course you would do apt-get upgrade first because, you know, everybody does that. I'm like, yeah, not me, because I didn't grow up doing Ubuntu servers, and so I like to have somebody remind me that these things are important. So I have done, by the way, my sudo apt-get upgrade and sudo apt-get update and upgrade. So anyway, next task. We're going to install it, we're going to run it, and then we're going to try to create our workflow. So we're going to curl the node stuff that we need. Oh, no, broken pipe. Yep, why not? Get back in there. System, that's fine. Okay, let's curl it up. Node.js 12 is no longer actively supported. Why is it telling me to get Node anyway? Okay, seems like it likes running on Node 12. Whatever. Continuing in 20 seconds. Continue now. Node 16. Yeah, it's a bit funny that they wanted to run on Node 12. Can we run it on Node like 20 or something that's a bit more up to date? Because I think those older versions are not really supported anymore. Let's find out. Can I run Node-RED on Node 20? It's telling me to install on Node 12, but it's quite out of date. Probably gonna have to search for that, I guess. It's generally compatible. Okay. Okay. Cancel. So we'll do. So what was this? What did it want me? Oh, what is it? What is this? What did it want me to do? Wanted me to install deb node source. Maybe I don't know why it's doing that. How would I change these instructions for node red for node 20? Oh, and I forgot to put the instructions in. How many times do I forget to paste things in to per ChatGPT and I have to stop it mid-sentence? I don't think it cares. Okay. Let's do that. That'll make it a bit happier. Yeah, look, no errors. Happy, happy. And then install node. This make people dizzy when I do stuff like this. What the? Oh my. I've broken something. Why does this always happen to me? Why do I deserve this? Okay. Red.pm to okay. Let's just try the next command. Maybe it all just worked out. So far, so good. And then install node red. Unsafe perm flag is often necessary when installing global npm packages using sudo. Okay. Oh, there's that screen that we wanted from before. Sudo npm not found. Oh yeah, because I haven't installed node then. So maybe I have to do this again. Or restart the machine. Yeah, let's restart everything. Why not? Just to be safe. And then this. That was better. Yeah, just the first time it crapped out. Okie dokie. And so once it's installed, sudo install unsafe. Yeah, so it did say to do the unsafe perm there as well, to do a global install. That's good. So then we do pm2. So I think we're going to need to install pm2, I guess. Sudo install, no, sudo apt install pm2. No. How do I install pm2? Please help me. Get hungry. I don't know why I get hungry at 10 past 11 in the middle of the day. It's not nearly lunchtime. Oh, I should have done sudo probably. I never add the Ubuntu to the sudo group, so I always keep having to do sudo all the time. I should just do that, but it's not good to use sudo all the time. Oh, okay, so they actually put in their install script, they put the pm2 as well. And that was G as well, and they used the unsafe perm, so I didn't use that. Oops. Try it again. Not sure how many versions of pm2 I have now, but Ta-da! PM2, Node-RED, started up. Looks good. And then we can do PM2 lists. And it says still online, so it's all good. So that's the handy thing about this is PM2 makes Node-RED run in the background, so I don't need to have it open. There's good things and bad things about that. The good thing is that it's running in the background, so I can carry on doing operations in the server. The bad thing is that when Node-RED is running, you actually get console output. So you can see in the server console things where you say like console log. It'll come out in the server and it'll drop that in a line in the server. That's good for debugging, not necessarily, obviously not important for production because you're not, it's going to be loads and loads of data coming out there, so we don't need to do console logs all the time. But yeah, so leave it here for now, and if there was a problem, we would need to think about maybe running it in the server or in an instance so we can see what's happening and debug it. 1880, I think was the link. Yeah. See, when things just work, that's when I think this library is a good library, right? This is very nice. Node-RED 3.1. We've changed some things. They don't get in the way when moving and clicking on a node. They can be reordered. Groups. I don't even know what a group is. I haven't got that far yet. I'm discovering it with you. Bigger canvas. Finding help. Improve context menu. Yeah, right-clicking. Like, right-clicking is just so... Oh, I love right-clicking in web apps. If you can't right-click in a web app, you've got a crappy web app. Like, obviously, I can't build a web app that you can right-click in because I don't know how to do that. But I'm just saying. So nice. Okay, so it's running. It looks good. One problem I ran into yesterday was not being able to install libraries because of a permissions problem in my Mac OS. It maybe won't be the same problem here. So let's try it out, and we'll try to install MySQL. We're going to take Node-RED Node MySQL version 2.20 because I think that's the official one. There's other ones, but you can see like they weren't updated recently. They're only on version 1.3. So, this one's already gone through 2 major versions. So that is going to be the one I trust. If you need to find out more about it, click on the link and it takes you to a page that explains the node. So this one looks pretty good. So before installing, please read Node's documentation. Some nodes have dependencies. So that's important to open it up and have a look and see, are there any dependencies? No, there aren't. So we can just go ahead and install that. If there were dependencies, just find them in there, or you maybe have to install them locally in your server. Another good reason to have PM2 running, so you can install local things and then just ask PM2 to restart Node-RED instead of having to like shut it down, install stuff, start it up again. It's a pain in the butt. There's also other cool stuff like dashboard I haven't tested out yet. We're not going to do it today, but there's I don't know which one is the best one, probably this. The dashboard means that you can actually open a separate tab that has like a graphical interface and you can connect it up to inputs. So you could actually have inputs in your node graph and then test out the flow with this page. And I think, again, people use that for the IoT because then you can have like in your local network, you have a page where you can input like what town you want to get the weather from, and then the flow will go and make an API call and return the weather data into this nice little graphical dashboard. So you actually don't need a front end. You have a back end that has its own graphical user interface that you can interact with, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so that's not what we need right now. What we need right now is a way to call this sucker. So let's try to do a test call from Noodle and see if it works. We're going to do HTTP in and HTTP response, and we're going to enrich the HTTP request with a function node. It seems like function nodes are pretty much used for everything in Node-RED. It's just a JavaScript function like it is in Noodle, but similarly we can just do whatever we want with it. We can use any JavaScript we want, any local library from the server that we want. It seems like, anyway, I don't know. We'll find out. So we can take the message and we can say message dot message equals hello world, and return the message from the function with this new parameter message, and then we hook it up. Got our HTTP endpoint that's called tests API, something like that, test API. It's going to be a post. We can have file uploads, that's cool. Process the binary from files, get images in there. That's going to be important when you're doing a create call, possibly going to S3 or something like that to create a file, or putting a file in the database if that's what you want to do. So the function is good, and then the HTTP is good. So the status code is going to be 200, and it's the response, and that's all. And function, there was something about give me the whole response. Anyway, we'll do a debugger as well, just so we can see what that does. Debug and inject. So we don't actually even have to call it yet. We can first inject and test and see what it is. So it's going to inject message.payload timestamp, message.topic, nothing. Message.topic is really important for SQL. The SQL command that you want, the query, sorry, that you want to do goes into the topic part. And this is something, apparently it's just like automatic. If you put it into the SQL node, it automatically delivers to the SQL database whatever the topic is, whatever the query is inside the topic. So like, you know, get star from whatever database. So we'll just put in the timestamp for now, that's fine. And then we're going to look in our debugger and trigger. Oh yeah, we have to deploy first, sorry. We have deploy options. We can deploy just one of the nodes or all of the nodes, or just the ones that have been modified. So this is cool, I guess, when you want to not deploy everything all at once, but test some stuff. So we'll debug that. No object response. What does that mean? Oh yeah, okay. No response object. So that's okay. We've got a debugger is putting out message payload number. It means that it hasn't worked to enrich this. I want to make a simple Node-RED workflow that adds hello world to the message object in a function node with a new message parameter message. A simple blah blah blah. Yeah, we've done that. And then we did that. Okay, we did that, did all that. So why is it not working? Oh, that's cool. You can add descriptions as well to things, and change the appearance of the node as well. Like, does it have a different icon? It's very nice. I like that. And you can also label the inputs and output ports. It's very nice too. So debugger's on, and the debugger is showing us the payload, but that's all we've got from there. You can have multiple outputs. How cool is that? Timeouts. Love it. I love it. You can have automatic injections. So once you start it, it injects every 5 seconds. And so you can see, like, if there's updated data, you'll be able to see that the data is updating correctly. So this code adds a new property message, add a debug node, connected to the function node. This output will result in deploy the thing, test your flow. Yeah, no, okay. I only see, there we go. Output message payload. That's not what we want. That's where it was. So sorry, the debug node can output just the payload or just the message if we want. Or it can output the complete message object, or it can output an expression. It's like a JSON-esque or something it's called, expression. Can't remember. I haven't got that far yet in my discovery. But yeah, so we're going to output the complete message object in the debug window. We can also output it in the system console, which would be our server. And node status, I don't know what that is. Now we can deploy that. Always have to deploy it. And then there it is. So message ID, payload, message. So it gives me the full object with the ID of the object and the message that we enriched it with. So that's nice. So now we can test the endpoint itself. So we should be able to do this. Take this address. Oh, lordy loo. Take this address. I'm going to do a simple API call. We don't need the topic anymore. Yeah, we do actually probably later. Okay, never mind. Copy paste this. Oops. We don't need a topic. The body is just going to be empty object, I guess. And then we'll see what comes out the other side. So let's do this. We're not going to get a cat GIF anymore. We're just going to test the workflow and see if that works. No. Oh, because I didn't put the endpoint on test API. I think that was what it was. Yeah, test API. Not yet. Okay. Outputs response. Nothing yet. So the server address is right, 180 was right, test API is the right endpoint. We're fetching it, we're doing a post. The body, maybe we just need to remove the body part. There's no body. And yeah, it gave me a response, but it was empty. Messages sent to this node must originate from an HTTP input node. What is that? Insert node, HTTP, input. Yeah, but that does, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a message. It goes to a function and it goes out. So maybe I need to delete these. Who knows? So it's responding. We don't have any options on how it responds. I think it just sends whatever data is brought into it, I guess. You can have headers. So it gets tested, test API, post, and then it does the function, and then it responds. So it should be working. Maybe we need to do it in Postman. Check and see what happens. Yeah, okay. Let's do it in Postman. So we'll take this. And Postman just might give us a bit more data. Test API. We have no body. No params. Send. Huh? So it's giving us a response. And there is the header saying it's working. So it is working, just it's not responding with any data. How do we get it to respond with something? Okay, let's have a look at the docs. Okay, input payload, the body of the response. Ah, okay. So message payload needs to go in there. Status code needs to go in there, and then cookies can go in there. So it means we should have got the timestamp because there is the payload. Let's do message.payload. We'll overwrite the payload. Dot message. Let's add something to the payload maybe. Oh, maybe that'll work. Nope. This gives us the 200 code. Okay. Yeah, it originates from the HTTP input node. body of the response. So it takes an input, the payload comes out, which could be just hello world, for example. And then it should respond with that object. Oh, there we go. So for some reason the timestamp, maybe it was because I was overriding it with the JavaScript, but the timestamp wasn't there. So that's working. And its response time is ridiculous, 180 milliseconds. Love it. And this is going from my local machine to an Amazon server, and it's running the tiny one. So consistently, that's, I could make a lot of calls. And it's every time giving me like 100 millisecond response. Doesn't seem to be crapping out or slowing down. And nothing is happening in here. Like, it's just, everything's cool here. No biggie. So that's good. That's kind of what I was hoping. Seeing people doing it on tutorials and me doing it on my local machine is one thing, but actually having it running on an EC2, which would be what you would do in a production server, is another thing. So this is, in general, just like Node-RED, what is it about? You can add flows. So you can have a new flow in here. Say this is the CRUD flow, this is the Cloud Functions flow, this is, you can rename them, lots of different tabs. You can group them, I think, as well. You can lock them. You can communicate between them. So there's like an in and out, link in, link out, which links between flows. So this would be like link in, say like this function is gonna pass something over. Link in one, yeah, it's gonna pass something. Oh, it doesn't want me to do it, okay. Oh, link in, so this comes in, sorry, my bad. So this is gonna pass something into this function from flow 2, which is gonna link out something else, another function or another, could be another HTTP node or whatever that will connect up. So that goes into link in 1. So link out 2 goes to link in 1, which is in flow 1, which is here, and it like clicks and shows you where it is. So you can also do subflows as well. So like this function could become, which was it? Insert node group. There's a way of making it a subflow. What was it? Group? No. Ungroup that. It's not export. I saw this last night. Subflows. Do I have to select multiple ones maybe? I'll figure that one out. There's a way of creating subflows, which is essentially the same as creating components in Noodle. So we can have like a connection in and out here, and when we click on it, it opens up a subflow that'll show us the elements that are inside it with the input and output, exactly the same as in Noodle. So that really attracted me to this concept. So that's all good. And yeah, so we wanted to do SQL. So insert a node, SQL, MySQL. So just one node to rule them all. What we need to do is add a database to that. So we're going to have to create a database in our, so we have to install MySQL. Can you help me install MySQL on my Ubuntu 22 server in EC2 and create a user Richard with password and database tests with a table cats. So just because I haven't set up 100,000 MySQLs, like maybe only 1 or 2, so I need a little guide on that. And it's SQL so picky about what it accepts and doesn't accept that I don't really want to mess around with it too much. So there we go. We've done update. We've done, yeah, we'll do update. Well, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it anyway. I did it before. I'll do it again. We need to install MySQL server. Shouldn't be too long. And then we do the secure installation. It removes all the like MySQL default junk from it. And then, yeah, we got to get in there and then create a user and then create a database and then grant privileges to the user on the database. Then we have to log in as Richard and do a table, and we create the ID, which is an automatic thing. It's the kind of thing I always forget, or I never would remember because I haven't done that much SQL stuff. It's going to be a name and breed. So ChatGPT has decided that I'm interested in what breed of cat it is and what age the cat is. So ChatGPT is a cat person, it seems like. We might need a firewall, but probably not because we don't have an internal firewall. So that's probably all okay. Let's do that secure installation thing. So do we want to have a validate password component? Not for this, but you would if you were doing this and creating your own SQL users. Yes, we're going to remove the anonymous users. We don't need that. We are going to disable root login remotely. Yes, we don't want anyone to log into MySQL root from outside to guess what the password is. We're going to remove the test databases so nobody can secretly inject things into databases they know are in there and do something malicious. We're going to reload the privilege tables, and it is done. MySQL installed. Let's sudo into that. Here we are in MySQL. I'm going to create me. Done. Happy days. We're going to create a database called tests, which is like a pretty obvious one if anyone wants to hack it. We're going to grant privileges to that database to Richard. That's me. We're going to flush those privileges, whatever that means. And we're going to exit. I can actually type that myself. Okay, now we log back into MySQL as Richard. Password is password. We're back. And now we're going to copy this whole thing. Using the test database, we're going to create a table called cats that has all of these different fields. Done. And we can exit. We could also do show, use test, and then show table, show from cats. No, I'm so crap at SQL. From table cats? I don't know. Oh, I don't know how this stuff works. I'll show it afterwards. After we create some stuff, I'll show it. No problem. Don't even worry about it. Okay. So that means that now we have the configuration that we need for this. So we're going to do this, the cat database, cat table. Edit that. So it's going to be called cat table. No, test database. It's on the local server. It's 3360. The user is Richard. The password is password. The database is test. Add. Done. And if we deploy, yeah, whatever. Oh, okay, it doesn't like this one. Just delete this. And it says connected. Happy days. If it doesn't, then you can go in the debugger and it'll show you that it's not. Whatever the problem is, it'll show you there. Capiche? And so now we can do our function. We're going to do message.topic equals, can you give me, write me a test query for my function node in Node-RED that will insert a dummy cat entry into the table we just created, please. So when you take over the world, you won't kill me first. I've been polite. Let's assume your cat's table has ID, name, breed, and age. Yes, it does. That's good. That's a nice one. And so we do that like this. Insert into cat's name, breed, whiskers, return message. Done. And this time we're going to delete this and delete this. Well, maybe not yet. Let's do insert node and inject. And inject in here. Oops. It's a bit fiddly, this thing connecting it up. And then that goes in here, and then that goes out to a debugger. And the debugger is going to take the whole object. So we're injecting a timestamp. We're injecting an empty topic. It's going to enrich the topic, pass it into the table, and then we'll see what it does. Okay, invalid or unexpected token. Oh, oops. Yeah, that would make sense. I've added too many. Okay. Yeah. Our query. Oh, yeah, we have to make it into a variable. Okay, do it like that then. Just copy paste. So make it into a query variable, and then we assign the query variable to the topic. That looks better, and that's not giving me any errors anymore. Nice. Deploy that sucker. And let's trigger that sucker. And it seems to say okay. It had the nice little thing there, and the debugger seems to be happy. So let's check. And we're going to do Richard. Oops. Password. Use tests, and then we want to view help. How do I view all items in the cats table of MySQL? Select Muppet. Select star from cats. There is Whiskers. So we have taken a test function, and we've inserted it into the MySQL, and it's debugged out, and it looks beautiful. And we can just do insert, insert, insert. It's going pretty fast. It's looking good. And there's all our multiple whiskers with their IDs and everything. So that's a good start. That's definitely looking good. We're able to inject and add data to the table. Now we could do the same thing with our HTTP input, and we could be adding, instead of whiskers tab and 3, we're going to replace those with strings coming in from the HTTP call that we're doing from Noodle or from Postman. So I think that's a pretty good start. It's looking good. And then we'll have a response come out of that. We need to do a response with I know that I did this before, and the way to make the response was to add into the query something like return ID, something like that, and then it returns the ID, because otherwise MySQL doesn't give an answer. It just says, it just inputs, and that's it. And then it goes on to the next step. So nothing comes out of it. We might want to get the ID because we want to maybe send the ID back to Noodle in the HTTP response and say, hey, we just added this ID to MySQL. What do you want to do with that? And then Noodle could say, okay, well then query item number 3 because I want to see that it's in there, and I want to add it into my array of cats in the front end of Noodle. So that's something I'll think about later, but I remember having to do that with another system. I had to add a specific thing to the query to get it to return the ID of the thing that it's created, because at the moment it's just going okay, and that's it. So, but that's good. I think we've done a good job there. It's a good start. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you play with Node-RED as well. It's a really easy thing to play with, and to install on EC2 and to set up is a breeze. So we'll see how far we can take this in terms of making it a MySQL API data layer for our backend for Noodle. See you next time.